It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. I'm Jim Meehan, semi-retired with the Spokesman-Review. That is Richard Fox, television analyst on KHQ SWX for Gonzaga basketball games. Foxy, we're going to get to the basketball, but I have to admit it was a good day, good week to be a one-game week for the Zags because the college football playoffs and the NFL playoffs, especially the NFL playoffs, were incredible. Who's your college team? Are you a Colorado guy still?
No,
Denver Broncos is your NFL, right?
Denver Broncos, yes. Of course, we get the number one seed. Now we got to play Josh Allen. My parents graduated from Georgia, believe it or not. So I'm not necessarily a Georgia fan, but if they're on, which is not that infrequently, I'll turn it on and just track it. My dad's really into it. So,
Yeah.
But no, Jim, as I've told you, if I'm going to watch professional sports, why would I watch college sports? I could just watch the real thing. So I watched a lot of NFL, and it's a much better product. And it's upfront about what I'm watching. So I'm not worried about 4,000 college football players being in the portal. That's just amazing. So,
we might get to that a little later if we have time.
Who are you rooting for in the championship, Miami or Indiana?
Well, I'm rooting for Indiana now, but I wanted Ole Miss to. I thought that would have been a great story.
How's that not a pass interference at the end of that game?
It was a pass interference. It just wasn't called, but. Yeah, I was hoping Ole Miss would kind of have the Cinderella story after Kiffin left, and now I'm down to my Rams. That's all I got left in the NFL. So we'll see what they do. They barely squeaked by, so they got to start playing better, man.
Yeah.
So Foxy, we're on a touch late, so we do have the AP poll. The rankings are out, so the Zags dropped one more spot to number 9. They've gone, I think, 5-0 in conference to start out, and they've dropped from number 7 to number 9, which maybe gives you an indication of what the voters on that media panel think of the WCC. They're dropping them a spot a week here. In the net, the Zags stay at number 6. The bracket projections that I saw, the Zags are down to the last spot on the 2 line. In bracket matrix, and I think Joe Lunardi's latest. So that's maybe a couple spots down too. I think they were 6th overall seed before. So another thing to keep an eye on. Quickly, Graham Ike was named the player of the week. Not a real surprise after his 34-point effort in the win over Santa Clara. So I think that's at least 2 for him, maybe even more. And I think Huff has 1 or 2 as well. So real quick look at kind of where the Zags stand. Really a nice week for the Zags. Took down Santa Clara, had them down 20 in the second half after being down 8 late in the first half. Not a good week for the teams on Gonzaga's non-conference schedule that they were kind of hoping would make that schedule, appealing to the people who are in charge of Selection Sunday and the net and all those things. Alabama, I think, lost twice. Oregon lost twice. Maryland lost twice. OU lost twice. That's half of the 8 teams they played. Nobody went undefeated either. The rest were 1-1. So they all took a little bit of a hit. Now that's going to happen when they're playing in the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12. But that didn't help Gonzaga's resume, so to speak. They need those teams. The funny thing is, you play these teams, you try to beat them, and then you hope like hell they win from then on out. So it strengthens your strength of schedule, but. That's something to watch, too. These teams had kind of bounced back. Kentucky had bounced back, and then they had a really bad loss at home against Missouri in a game they were leading. The best win on Gonzaga's schedule, net-wise, And ranking-wise is Alabama. They dropped, I think, to 18th in the poll, losing twice. So those teams, and this is cyclical, they go up and down, but kind of worries me in one sense because the Zags only have a couple more quad ones, and that's if St. Mary's stays at 30 in the net.
Yeah.
St. Mary's would be two of those. Santa Clara, I think, away would qualify as a quad one. Have to double check my math there, but then they've got a few quad twos with USF and this game coming up this weekend, Seattle U. The rest are quad threes and fours, and those don't get you anywhere unless you lose them. Then you tumble. So you're getting a little worried about how the non-conference opponents and how the WCC shakes out and what it might do to their seeding.
I mean, yes and no, but I think we're talking about it's incremental. I don't think it's like a drastic move. I remember Dickau's senior year. I mean, their record was really impressive. I think they might have been undefeated in the league, or maybe lost one to Pepperdine, top 10 ranking, and they were like a 7 seed or something. Whatever their seed was remarkably low. I think the days of that are over. I think it's much more sophisticated now as far as determining where people should be seated. It's not simply just the league that you're in. And Gonzaga's built up, I think, rightfully so, a real reputation as not only a really good program, but a team that's going to win some games. So, yeah, I mean, do you fall off the 2 line and fall a spot, maybe 2, if it just goes completely south on you, potentially? Yeah. But look, if you're a top 4 seed, that's a pretty good place to be. And as I've been saying the last few years, and I think this may be changing in the salary cap era that we're in. Notice I refuse to call it NIL anymore. The pay for play era that we're in. I think the parity that we saw for so long, I think that is starting. That's rapidly going away. And so as a result, I used to say, look, if you're a top 4 seed, certainly top 2 seed, you should handle your first round game relatively easily. But immediately that second game, you're playing a good team. Yeah. And historically, call it the last 10 years up to maybe last season, you were playing older teams and teams with a lot of experience, and you can lose those games. So now, I think being a top 4 seed, you've got a real chance to have a pretty comfortable first weekend. I think that's just where they want to be. But the minute you get to the Sweet 16, you're playing against, I think, teams that all think they have a chance they have real budgets, real players, older groups. Yeah. At that point, I mean, it's very competitive, and it's hard to have to have a clear-cut favorite in any of those games.
I think the year you mentioned, Dickau's year, was weren't they 6th ranked and 6th seeded? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. They played Wyoming, and I don't know if that was the second round or first round, but they and played terribly. Dickau and Steps really struggled, and that was really early in the run. That was Mark's second year, I want to say, and they've learned a whole lot since the subsequent 25 years or so. But I'm not overly worried about it. But I do think, it's hard. That's the challenge of being in the WCC is you have to get it right in a non-conference, right? Because if you schedule what appears to be a very difficult schedule going into the year, but those teams don't kind of live up to their end of the bargain, you don't have any real opportunities down the stretch. And that's the challenge Gonzaga's had in the WCC.
Yeah, there's only a couple more, quad ones to try to impress folks, and quad twos at this point. That could change, but you're only looking at a handful of times where they can really make a dent in people's opinions.
Well, and what it does mean is a loss outside of St. Mary's is going to hurt them a lot when it comes to seeding, perception, all of that stuff. So, if they're looking for more additional reasons for motivation, that would be one of them on my list.
Yeah. Well, let's get through the Santa Clara game the other day. The Zags trailed, I think, caught up at the end of the half, got down what did that thing get to, Foxy? Was it 8?
Mm-hmm.
10?
Yeah.
8, I think.
It was 8. I think it was 8.
So they get down and make the comeback and then dominate the second half. There was about a 25-minute stretch there where they were on it again, offensively, defensively, looking like the Zags we've kind of seen over the first couple months of the year. But let's start with Graham Ike. That was a masterpiece. Maybe as efficient and as good an all-around game as he's had in a Zag uniform. 34 points. First time he scored 30. That blew me away when I looked back through it. It's like he flirted with it. I think he had 28 twice against Kentucky. He had 35 when he was with Wyoming. But he goes 13 of 17 from the field. Makes his only 3, which I believe was your basic 6'9", 250 guys step back 3.
Yeah. I'm sure he works on that 3 all the time.
Yeah, and he hit another tough shot clock one where he's off balance and threw it in. And he goes 7 of 8 at the line, 11 boards. I mean, that was a masterpiece. Why was it his night? I mean, Santa Clara's got some bigs. They know his game. Maybe Ensminger, I think, is kind of the one that would know Graham more than the other guys, the new guys. They got size. They got a 7-footer there that's pretty bouncy. Why did Graham just dominate from start to finish?
Well, I mean, it's certainly his physicality, and I just think sometimes it's not very complicated. He clearly had it going immediately. I mean, you referenced that tough jump shot. That was in the first half, late clock. Yeah. Turning over his right shoulder to his left hand, I don't know, 15, 16 feet. I mean, nothing but net, right? Yeah. I mean, he had some really difficult shots that he knocked down. And when you see a guy as talented as Graham do that early in the game, you feel pretty confident he's going to be there the rest of the night. And you saw that. When I watch Graham play, and this is most nights because he's very consistent. When he's quick about his decisions, you know he's feeling it. Like, I mean, it's when he slows down and you see him have to take 2 dribbles to back a guy down, or he pauses and one of his catches on the perimeter, where I sometimes wonder to myself, is he in his head a little bit? He's overthinking this. But I thought against Santa Clara, he was very decisive with his touches, his action. He's a problem for everybody, maybe outside of St. Mary's with their size in this league, with just how strong he is. He's about as good as I've seen in my career as far as initiating contact as the offensive player. And, you got their guys in some foul trouble. It was just difficult for them. It was just interesting. I mean, you don't win the game without that performance. Reminded me of the San Diego game with Worley. I mean, they've had a couple of those here to start conference play where one guy has basically been the difference. And that happens. That's not necessarily like a red flag or anything. It's not as if you're starting to have some heartburn about how things are progressing for GU, but it's interesting. A couple games here early in the slate, they've needed some pretty, I don't know if heroic's the right word, but certainly abnormally exceptional performances from a couple guys to find a way to win some of these ball games, and Graham certainly delivered that. Is
that scouting? Is that like they've got a stud? We're giving him 30. If he gets 30, if he's shooting good, that's fine. We're shutting the other guys down, or is that a choice they made, or is it just they got so many things you got to worry about with the shooting and Huff and all that it might be his nights, so nothing we can do.
Well, look, I have a 50-50 chance of being right about this, but I will say I didn't notice anything about St. Mary's game plan that Santa Clara that led me to believe that they were wanting to give it up to Graham and to see if he got cooking. He got cooking. But I confess I didn't pick up on anything exotic they were doing defensively. He certainly had plenty of one-on-one coverages, but when he got deep in the paint, he had multiple bodies. But it almost felt like it was just a tip of the cap to him afterwards. Like, he hit some tough shots. I think that's what Sendik kind of came across and said was he just had a night. I mean, it was really impressive. And I think for Santa Clara, there was probably some disappointment in just how they shot the ball overall. It was an interesting game. I mean, you look at it, first half, Santa Clara shoots 38%, Gonzaga 54. So you think Gonzaga's what, up 18, 20? Santa Clara's 3 of 15 from three, Gonzaga just 3 of 8. But then you go dig into the numbers, they're equal on the boards, 18 apiece. Gonzaga has 10 turnovers, Santa Clara with 9. So no real advantage there. Points off turnovers, 12-2, 12-10, Santa Clara. Fast break points, Santa Clara 5, Gonzaga 0. Bench points tied up.
Yeah.
The biggest delta was field goals attempted, which 34 to Santa Clara, just 26 for GU, so +8. But even those stats, you think to yourself, I mean, Gonzaga shoots a higher percentage. That, you know, they're not getting beat on any one category. It was just odd. That was the odd part about this game.
Yeah,
and then
they were scrambling to get it tied. Even
yeah, they were down 8 with 2 minutes and 52 seconds left. The score was 37-29.
Yeah.
But then the second half, I mean, Gonzaga ups their field goal percentage to 61%. Santa Clara shoots better, 48%. But Gonzaga +4 on the glass. Santa Clara 3 more turnovers in GU. Gonzaga +5 in points off those turnovers. Gonzaga gets a couple extra field goals, +4 in fast breaks. And Santa Clara actually does win the battle in points off the bench. So, you know, I just think it has to do with Graham. I thought Santa Clara took some bad shots there when Gonzaga started getting a little bit of that early part of the run. I thought their shot quality was not what it had been. And Gonzaga took full advantage. That 3 Graham hit was a bit of a backbreaker, I think, for Santa Clara. But it's interesting. I mean, 2 guys in double digits, Huff at 12 points, really quiet, 6 of 9, 6 rebounds. I know 3 of those were offensive. Innocenti, a little bit out of nowhere, 13 points, really solid. But nobody, I think Grant Foster had 7 in the first half, didn't score in the second. Yeah, it reminded me of the San Diego game with Worley. Yeah. Where all of a sudden one guy just had it going and made all the plays that they needed, and that was Ike.
We've kind of touched on this before, but it seems like if you kind of watch how these games have gone, especially in league where they know you and you know them, you know, they get down to LMU by 10 early. Mm-hmm. Seattle U kind of kicked their tail for a while. I mean, they were up 8 or 10, something like that, or 13 in the second half, but they were leading quite a bit of that game. 13 in the second half. Santa Clara's got them down 8. San Diego makes the run at them in the second half. That's the one outlier, I think, here. But it goes back to when you're playing a team like Gonzaga that's pretty complete, pretty good offensively, pretty good defensively, lots of options, all those things. You might lead them for 20. You might beat them for 25 minutes. Seattle, you probably beat them for close to 30. And to beat them, though, you got to beat them for 40, and that's hard to do when you're, you're pretty heavy underdog. I don't know what the spread on was with Santa Clara was, but to do it, you got to go start to finish, because if you have a 4 or 5 minute lap. The 17-0 run the other day, 4 or 5 minutes against Santa Clara, turned that whole thing into a blowout. So I think that is the challenge for an underdog anywhere, any conference, but especially in this one where Gonzaga's got better talent than everybody in the league. St. Mary's is in the mix, but I don't think you're trading player for player. You can scheme it, you can perform it, you can lead, but you got to do it for the whole 40, and eventually their depth and their coaching and their talent rises, and you might see games like Seattle U. You might see a game like LMU where they look terrible early and then end up winning by 35. That's a challenge for folks.
Yeah, I think it's the depth, right? It's 8, 9 guys if you want to throw in Vogel from time to time. All very high-level college players, but physically big, strong. Yeah, I think there's an attrition that takes place, I think, for some of these teams that don't have the depth. I mean, Seattle plays 10 guys. Now, they've fallen off a cliff since they played GU, but they're used to playing with that kind of depth, and I think that helped them. It's a very well coached league. It's always has been. I think teams come in in part they do throw a bit of the kitchen sink at Gonzaga. They're willing to maybe play outside the box a little bit, try some schematic stuff that they don't necessarily want to or need to do against the rest of the league. And so, I don't know. I don't think Gonzaga's necessarily, they're scouting these teams, but then they're seeing new stuff every night. And so there's an adjustment period to that. I also think, the more I watch these guys play in league in particular, where there's so much familiarity between the programs, it's just, I think you and I talked about this, but there's I continue to have questions about how they score outside of Ike and Huff. Feels like Grant Foster, dependent on the matchup, dependent on his jump shot, is that third scorer for them. And obviously the numbers indicate that, but there's not a consistency with Grant Foster in the same way there is with Huff and Ike. Ike will have a dud of a game or a game he struggles from time to time. Huff's been remarkably consistent for the bulk of this year, but who else is going to score for them? And I look at it just feels like they don't have a lot of creation on the perimeter as far as guys who have a handle that can get into gaps and score for themselves or really break down a defense. It's like Ike and Huff are the sun, and all of these other players of the planetary system around them, and you just don't know what you're going to get from these guys. I mean, Venters, Miller, and Enchente, all of them are primarily three-point shooters. I mean, Venters, 86% of his shots from three. Miller, 64, and Enchente better than half. Venters has shot 11 free throws, Miller 15, and Enchente 10 on the year. Yeah. They're not looking to attack. If they get it, they get a cut or wide open transition bucket, fine, they'll take it. But in the half court, they're just they're further out. I mean, from the sun, they're just looking to take advantage of whatever the kickouts are. And both Mario and Smith, from a scoring perspective, there's just a wide variance to what you're going to get. I don't think Braden Smith's looking to score at all, really. He's had a couple games. Oregon comes to mind, but he's a facilitator. He's a calming influence, and then Mario's just. It feels like he's giving you 13 or 15 or he's giving you 6. And it's 6 on really inefficient shooting. And so I don't know. The more I watch him, Jim, I don't know what to make of it other than I think it's something to keep an eye on. The teams in the league, St. Mary's is really the only one I think that has the size for 40 minutes to try to say, we're going to shut this off inside. Somebody else has to score for you, and I'm really anxious to see that matchup just because I think that's how I'd play it. I mean, they have the size to probably not have to force the double team, but if they wanted to, I just think I'd want to. If I was playing Gonzaga, I'd want someone else to beat us, and they just seem so dependent on these two. I mean, it took a masterpiece from Ike. If he had an off night, I mean, I suppose you could argue somebody else would have stepped up, but I don't know. I mean, there's just not the balance of scoring that we've seen years past, right? We talked about it briefly last week. 3 guys in double digits going into last week. I haven't looked at it today, but I mean, I'll look at it right now. Are we still stuck at 3? Yeah. At no point in the last 20 years has that happened.
No.
And that worries me a bit, if I'm being honest.
To me, it's got to be TGF. It kind of has to emerge as that 12 to 15, count on it every night. Yeah, he's the most likely candidate. But as they've done all year, that's just not how it's been. He might do it 3 out of 5 games, and then it might be Steele in there for 12 or Miller. Miller make a bunch of winning plays again the other night. It might be Smith or Mario. Could be Worley. Like there's 2 or 3 games where he's been, 10-6 or 12-8. But that is a thing to keep an eye on. And then I was as bad as it got for Santa Clara in the second half. I was impressed with their lineup, their roster. They've got some depth. They've got talent, and they did not shoot the ball very well. But I do think the Zags did a better job, obviously, than last year. But in general, of containing the 3-point line without getting killed on the drive. Without getting beat on 2-pointers and post up stuff. They don't have a ton of post up type of scorers. They do have some guys who can get it off the offensive glass and score it. But I think the Hammond kid is really good. He didn't play great the other night, but he's nice size, pretty composed, and you can see where he's 17, 18 a night. You can see it. He's got some ability, and I think Mahi had a bad night as well, 3 of 9. But he's a bigger physical kid, 6'7", 6'8", and just he had trouble with Gonzaga too. But I like that squad. I think the game down there is going to be very, very, very hotly contested.
Yeah,
I think they're pretty good, actually. We'll see how it goes.
They're going to play better at home, and I think Sendek's a really good coach. It's funny. I watched it at home, and I swear in the first half he might have stood up twice. And I remember playing him when he was at NC State in New Jersey, I want to say. They had a pretty good team, and he was so demonstrative. And, back then, coaches wore the suit. He's, sweating through his dress shirt. And it's just funny how time and experience can calm you down. He just was so steady. I was impressed with his demeanor, I'm a little bit of a tangent here, but when I watched a lot of these teams play, and primarily just the best teams in the country, obviously, because that's what's on national television, is I watch these coaches, and I think it's so evident. I mean, Bill Self has calmed down. You have to, it all starts with that guy. If you've got a guy who's losing his mind constantly, I mean, I guess Hurley's the exception to the rule, but yeah. I think that trickles down to your team where there's just a panic or unsteadiness. And I was really impressed with Mark. Has that too. Mark can be demonstrative at times, but generally speaking, he's chill, not real demonstrative. I just was impressed with Sendek. I think that his guys feed off of that calmness, and they just play really steady.
I like their roster. They came back and beat LSU bad, and the kid off the bench, the guard, had 37. The guard, he doesn't even start. So I really think that team could get better and better as the year goes on. But we got to move on, Foxy, to Washington State. That's coming up Thursday, and then Seattle U on Saturday. Both these on the road. As the Zags continue not to leave the state in January here. They're hanging close to home. Wazoo gave St. Mary's everything they wanted in the second half. I think they were down 12. They gave up 50 at half, down 12, but they made it a game. They got back within 5 or 6. I think they're 3-2 in conference. Not a bad start after really a pretty rough non-conference. Love the freshman kid, Ace Glass. I think he was in double digits again the other day. He had 40 in the one game earlier this year, and a pretty efficient scorer, especially for a freshman. You might see those guys be volume type shooters. He is not that. He's a very good free throw shooter. He's a good shooter overall, but he doesn't take 25 shots to score 16 points. That's going to be interesting. That might be the ace on ace matchup with Ace Miller for the Zags and Ace Glass for Wazoo guarding each other. They're both about 6'3"-ish, 6'4"-ish maybe. Mm-hmm. That to me stands out as the matchup. Wazoo's got other pieces that are pretty good. I just think that kid can be a real difference maker, and if he gets going at home, that is. And I think it's hard. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's harder to take out or shut down, limit a guard who can create, who can shoot it he can do it, who has the ball in his hands, as opposed to a big operating usually within 8 feet. They've got to get the pass. They've got to get, if they're doubled, they probably got to kick it. So what do you make of that matchup? And is that the one you gotta win if you're Gonzaga, or at least make his scoring be challenged like it was for Hammond the other night?
Well, look, this is a team that is kind of middle of the road, middle of the pack in WCC play across the board statistically. The one area where they struggle is taking care of the ball. They're the worst assisted turnover team in the league, -4 turnover margin, meaning they turn it over more than they turn other people over. So, but they've got some size. I mean, they've got Vavers, Latvian kid, second year there, 6'7". Yalaho, I don't know, transfers from Texas Tech. He's from Finland. He's 6'8", 235. And then they've got Thrasser Starsson. Jesus, Jim, I'm glad I'm not calling this game. 6'7" from Iceland, really going Nordic state here, or Nordic countries here. And then Okafor's from Ireland. I mean, I wonder what language they're running practice in. But nonetheless, he's a Cal transfer, second year there. He's 6'10", 250. Yeah, good size. He can block shots. He's a very good rebounder. And then they've got the freshman guard. I mean, he can really score it. He's solid from 3, just under 36%. Not a playmaker, just 2 assists a game. He is looking to score 11 field goals attempted per game. I think they're really, really well coached. They had a really good team last year. I think if Coward had not hurt himself, I think that was the tournament team. And I remember they gave Gonzaga fits up here, and then kind of like the story we're telling here to start this year, kind of ran out of steam down the stretch. Yeah. It had some guys not play well. Their front court guys up here in Spokane were really bad. I think it's a game that Gonzaga should handle. This is at WSU, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's going to be a pretty good crowd. I mean, certainly a lot of Zag fans are going to make the drive over, but the Cougs are going to have people in the gym. I mean, shoot, I've had a lot of people tell me they've had that game on the calendar, that they're going to go down and see that game, that are Coug fans. So yeah. I think that's going to be a real road game, even though you're going to have a lot of Zags there. There's a lot of tape out on GU now, and teams have had some degree of success here early in league. I'll be really interested to see how they defend Ike and Huff. If you're playing Gonzaga, you've got, in my opinion, you have to pick your poison and either let Ike and Huff go one-on-one. I think that what you risk there is that they put a lot of foul pressure on you. Yeah. And then you just shut it off from everywhere else, or the inverse. You just say, these two are not going to beat us. We're going to force, all these other guys to be the scorers. But then on the flip side of that, you've got to then rebound out of those possessions. And Gonzaga's been a very good rebounding team this year. Generally, they haven't been as dominant in league play, but yeah. They're a good rebounding team, and that's where they really can break your back. You've got a great possession. You force the shot you want from the shooter you want, or even if it's a contested 3 for Venters, it's a long rebound, offensive rebound. Now you've got to do it all over again.
Yeah. So Worley sneaks in.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, the question I have, I mean, they've got 4 guys, I think, in double digits. Let me check. No, 2 guys in double digits, and then
couple right there.
Faster Stun is at 9.9, and Yalaho. They have 3 guys at 9 points a game.
Yep.
So I mean, I love these games. I love when they play the Huskies. I love when they play the Cougs. I think these games are a little different. It's the in-state stuff matters. When I played, that was a big game for us. So it was certainly a different time in the Gonzaga's story. And those games had a different meaning. If we were still the small school in the east side of the state, and I'm not sure that the program was getting the level of respect that it does now. Certainly was not getting the level of respect it does now nationally, or even in the state. And now we're at a point where I don't think Gonzaga would schedule WSU. But when I played, we would do everything we could to get that game on the schedule. But no, I think that'll be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a rowdy environment, but look, Gonzaga is the better team. Look, when you go on the road, because they're at Seattle too, you've got a guard. That's where everything starts. It should be that way at home too, but that's where it's going to be for them on the road here. And students should be back for both those schools.
Yeah.
So I expect that they're going to be true road games. They're going to be tested.
I think there was 10,000 there last year when the Zags won down there. Pretty good environment. And if I remember right, I think they forced Nolan Hickman to be kind of the guy. If we can't cover everything, he's going to be the guy we leave. And I think he burned him twice, hit a bunch of threes. I know down there he did. I can remember that. And I think at home he had a nice day too. So that may be something to watch if they just abandon the 3-point line and say, you're not getting 50 point paints tonight. Let's see. Now, let's move on to Seattle U. That first game with the Red Hawks was very interesting, to say the least. The Zags had a lot of trouble scoring it. Got out of a big hole in the second half and eventually forced overtime and won it. Looked fairly bleak there for a while in the second half because Seattle U kept doing what they're doing. I thought their double teams on EK, and I can't remember if they doubled Huff as much. Usually it's EK down on the block, and the way they brought the double, the way they limited the kick out damage and the 3-ball, how they recovered from that. I thought they were really on point and made their possessions look a little clunky. And eventually the Zags solved it. I think EK got going.
Yeah.
Huff, I believe, got going a little too. That was the game where they only had 2 or 3 scores, I think, at halftime, right? Is that if I remember right? Yeah.
All but 9 points came from Huff, EK, and Grant Foster.
So you played them a few weeks ago. You played them this weekend. You got a couple more games of tape in between, whatever. How much do game plans change? Or do you say, hey, it worked. We just didn't close it the last 5-6 minutes. It worked. We're not changing a thing until you show us you can handle what we're going to do. In other words, should the Zags be practicing that double team, EK down low, and figure out where guys got to spot up and how we deal with that? How much change do you expect, or do you think it's going to be the same?
I think the game plan rhymes. I think there'll be some wrinkles. Look, I mean, Seattle came up here, started a 3-game road trip, right, or 3-game stretch on the road. They played at St. Mary's and then at Oregon State, and I don't think they felt good about how they played in either of those games. But now they're back home. They've got San Diego, I believe, Thursday, kind of a get right game. If they're as good as they looked at in Spokane, which they looked awfully good, they'll get back on track Thursday night against the Toreros.
Yeah.
You have students there. I think that'll be a very well-attended game at Climate Pledge. There's certainly a lot of Zag fans, but the students will be there for Seattle U. You have to think that you're going to shoot the ball at a better clip. If you're Seattle U, only shot 33% from 3, 36 from the field in Spokane. I think you're just banking on the fact that guys like June and Molinado are going to be more comfortable in their home gym and knock down some shots. Certainly Hembrot, who was 4 of 19. He's not going to shoot that there.
I like that kid, man. I think he's a good player.
I like him too. He's a really, really good defender. Look, they out-rebounded Gonzaga by 1. I think that's just the second time this year, Michigan being the other one, -6 in that game where Gonzaga lost the rebounding battle. That's going to be critical for Seattle U, and can they make more shots than they made up here? Defensively, I was super impressed with their scheme. They changed it up. You saw them in zone, some trapping, in the half court. They changed where the double was coming. They were very disciplined about staying on their feet outside of a couple instances. But the rebounding is what kept them in it. They just didn't give up a lot of second chance opportunities to Gonzaga, and they got some of their own. So, but I tell you what, it's hard to beat teams twice. When you have that kind of delta between just the talent level. I'm confident that they're gonna have all of Gonzaga's attention when it comes to that game, and they're gonna need to shoot the ball a whole lot better. and they've kind of rebounded. I think if those two things happen, they've got a chance. And they played 10 guys.
Yeah.
I really like the way they rotate their guys through. Dan was a bit of a revelation in that game. The kid out of China, his stats don't jump out at you, but he is big.
Yeah.
Plays really physical. June's going to shoot it better. He's only 3 of 11 up here. I know a couple of those were kind of prayers. So I'm excited for that game. I think that game could be pretty competitive. Quite frankly, I think both these games could be competitive.
Yeah.
And I just think that might be the theme of this team. And this has been the theme the last couple of years in the league, Jim. It just has been. The Gonzaga has, they've not won the league. And 2, they've played a ton of close games in this league the last couple of years.
Yeah. And this one, where it falls too, I think, is because the Zags have to be totally dialed on Washington State. You're going down there to Pullman. It's going to be a beehive, and they're good enough to where you can have real problems if you go in there and you're looking ahead, And so I think that's the turnaround, the travel, the turnaround to get implemented for Seattle U, who is going to require some real prep and study after what they did the last time. And they're just flat one of the better defensive teams around. If they're not St. Mary's, they're probably second best defensive team in the.
I would agree with that.
And their bigs kind of, at least in that game, had the ability for most of it to go one-on-one. And that changes the equation for Gonzaga's offense quite a bit when Ike and Huff are being guarded one-on-one. So I think you're going to have 2 really heavily motivated teams. The Zags trying to get this right and win this league after the last 2 years, watching St. Mary's hoist the trophy. And St. Mary's is undefeated still, so that collision course remains. And then you've got Seattle U, I think only has 1 league win. Somehow,
yeah.
They might have the 3rd best roster, but they're 4th. Them and
they're
Santa
1 and
Clara,
4.
very similar to me. Them and Santa Clara, their rosters have a lot of potential. They do it different. Santa Clara wants to score 85, 90. Seattle U wants to hold you to 60, 65. And they held the Zags down. I mean, the Zags needed overtime to get to 80. And they needed to play very well in the last half of the second half to get to, 72-ish by intermission? I can't remember how many they scored in overtime. But it was a real battle. So I expect the same on Saturday night. And Foxy, I was going to dive into another topic, but we may be hitting it close here. We got a deadline tonight. We need to meet. You good wrapping it here?
Yeah, let's wrap it here. We'll have a couple games to talk about next week. We can dive into whatever.
Okay, let's do that. Well, thanks everybody again for joining us every Monday. I'll post this there's a YouTube channel. Just search Zags Insiders Podcast, and then on our website, I'll post that here in a couple hours. Thanks as always to Christy Burns, and for everybody dropping by. We'll see you in a week.